Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome back to Jamie Photography. So in this video, it's going to be a little bit shorter video, but in this video, I'm going to show you how to do indoor shots, so that you can balance the outdoor light and the indoor light to make it work. And this is a wonderful little workshop I found down in Beaulieu in Hampshire in the south of England. And I thought there's so much going on in here, really interesting, all the different items on the bench. It's very busy, so actually makes for quite an interesting shot. So actually shot with a Micro Four Thirds camera. This was shot with an Olympus OM EM1 Mark II, and it's a 20 megapixel image shot at ISO 800. So where did we start? Where did we start from? Well, we started here. This was the raw image, and you can see I shot for the highlights here, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how we do that and where we go with the image when we process it. The raw image I'm going to put down below. There's a link down below, so you can download the raw image and you can follow along. I always think that's fun. If you do, just please respect my copyright. If you do choose to repost your version of this image, just please give credit to myself, Jamie R. Mathlin. That would be most appreciated. And if you enjoy the video, please click like. And of course, I love to see your comments and any questions that you might have, and also tips. Put those down below as well. I always do try to answer all of those. Also, feel free to take a look at my website, jrmathlin.uk. I've got a number of workshops planned for this summer, and it would be great to have you along, join me to come on some day to night extravaganzas. London and Paris are the two summer ones, and I'm still working on a plan for the autumn to cover a number of English medieval cities, and also visiting Stonehenge. So that should be exciting as well. Hopefully I'll have that out soon. And of course, I've also got a night sky pack available on there. So feel free to go in and have a look at those. Okay, let's get started. So my normal workflow really kicks off with noise reduction. And with the Micro Four Thirds sensor, there can be just a little bit more noise than maybe an APS-C or of course a full frame sensor, but that's okay because we have the denoise function available to us. And if I just zoom in here a little bit and just have a look how much noise, let's just push up the exposure slightly just to have a look here and see how much noise there is. There's a fair bit of noise. We did shoot at ISO 800, so we are pushing the limits of a Micro Four Thirds image, but still it's very good quality for a 20 megapixel image. So we're going to run the denoise function here. So we're going to just select 50% because it's not overly bad. We're just going to run that. So it says it's going to take approximately 4 seconds. So we're just going to run that now, and that'll just create a new noise reduction version of an enhanced noise reduction version of that image there. So we zoom back in again to that same point. You can see that the noise has gone completely. So incredible function here. Now, some people are having problems with denoise. It takes a long time, certainly on older computers that don't tend to have either enough graphics card memory or the AI instructions that the modern processors have. So what you can do, of course, is you can use the luminance slider to remove the noise by bringing that up and then balancing everything off with masking. That's possible. I showed that in my last video. But the denoise function is worth waiting for. And of course, if you've got smaller images like this 20 megapixel image, it doesn't take so much effort for the computer to deal with them. So you'll find that they'll be easier to cope with. So once we've done the denoise, we're in here now. We're going to go to the crop tool, and I'm just going to crop in slightly. There's a little bit of sort of distraction, if you wish, on the edge there. So I'm just going to pull that over slightly, and I'm just going to bring it up slightly to take out the edge of this wheel here that we can see. Just bring that up slightly like so. Hit return. So the next step is to look at the exposure. So I'll double click, take us back to where we were. I shot for the highlights, as you can see here, we've exposed for the brightest part of the image, which is this window, which does leave the rest of the room quite dark. But even with the Micro Four Thirds sensor, we do have still quite a bit of dynamic range that we can use to regain this. So if I just open up the shadows here slightly, you can see that if I open them all the way, you can see you can recover pretty well all of the shadows there. And because we've used the denoise function, even if you zoom in the detail is still very good. This is a little bit of noise there, but it's pretty good. Pretty good condition. So I'm not going to open it all the way up because I think it gives it a bit too much of an HDR effect. I'm just going to open up a little bit. We're going to relight some of these areas with some radial gradient shortly. We do need to do with the lights because they're blown out, as you can see. If I go up to the histogram and hover over the right hand triangle, you can see the areas in red are where we've effectively clipped. We've gone beyond the limits of this image, but there is dynamic range there, as I said, so we can bring the highlight slider down until that triangle goes off. You see that triangle is no longer illuminated now. So we've just brought that down. There is a tendency to want to go all the way and bring it all the way down, but that can create a little bit of an unnatural look. So as I say, when we're in the center there, you look to the histogram, you see that we're clipping at the top end. We're going to go to the highlights and we're going to bring that down until that clipping is stopped. You see that triangle is no longer illuminated. And we've got our shadows roughly where we want them. As you can see, you start to be able to see outside here, and you can see that there is some detail outside the window there. I'm just going to bring it down slightly more, not too much more, just a little bit more on the highlights, just so that you can actually see that there's things outside. So we can do our blacks and whites as well now. So I'm going to hold down the Option or Alt key, and then I'm going to grab the white slider, and you can see that there is some blue. If I move that up, you can see it turns to white. You can see there's some blue marks there, but we're not clipping up at the top here to the blue by any substantial amount. So we'll stick with the whites there at +10. We'll do the same with the blacks. We'll hold down the Option or Alt key. We'll take the black slider, and we will see where that takes us. We don't want too much. We want a little bit of black showing, just a little bit as you can see there, just the yellows and the greens. I think about there would be fine. So we've got a good contrast on the image. So blacks are +23, whites are +10, and that's giving us a pretty good balance. We are still clipping. If I hover over the left-hand triangle, you'll see that the blue appears in the image, and that's where we're clipping to true black. But that's okay because it's under the bench and it's sort of tucked away. We're quite happy with that. It gives us a good degree of contrast. So where do we go next? Well, I think we need to bring a bit of character to this room. We need to sort of light up certain areas more than others. So to do that, as I always do with my sort of day to night technique, is I lower the overall exposure down. So I bring this down. You can't go too low because you don't want to destroy the sort of reality look through the window here. So I'm probably going to go down to about there, which is say -1 stop. And that looks okay. These lights are a little bit dim, but we can brighten them back up. So we need to show the light coming through here a little bit more. So I'm going to go into masks, and I'm going to go to a radial gradient, and I'm just going to pull a radial gradient into this area here, placing the center sort of in this sort of area underneath the window. And I'm just going to turn that, and then what we're going to do is just make that a little bit bigger. I might go over a little bit more to the right there. And then what we're going to do is just bring up the exposure a little bit in that area, so we can just brighten that area up over here. You can see that that's working quite well. In fact, we probably want to brighten the window up a little bit more as well. So I'm going to go back to masks. I'm going to take objects. I'm going to make my brush bigger using the square brackets just to the left of the return key. And I'm just going to take, using the selection here for objects, I'm just going to take that area around the window. And it should take for me, just process, just there we go. That's just the window area. There's a little bit left underneath there, you can see. So I'm just going to add another object to that same mask. Take the brush a little bit smaller, and I'm just going to put that bit in there as well. That worked well. And there's a little bit there as well. So add another object, and I'm just going to pick that area. So there we go. We're pretty good. You might be that little one there as well. Let's make sure we cover the detail. Take a smaller brush still, and I'm just going to go in there, and we've added all of that to that mask. So that whole mask is now covered. Mask 2 covers that area there. So what we can do is we can brighten up that window just a little bit. There we go. And I can also bring down the highlights, not too much, just a little bit there, just to balance it off. Now it is quite blue, the light coming out from outside, but of course we've got quite a tungsten orangey light inside. So let's add a little bit of temp to that mask whilst we're here, and just take a little bit You can see that we've just added a little bit, but it does bring a green hue in, so we can take the tint slider here and move it towards the magenta just to balance the color off. There we go. That looks good. So let's deal with the lights. Again, create a new mask, radial gradient, and I'm just going to take a small radial gradient based on the light bulb there. Just going to turn that slightly, and then I'm just going to brighten that up. Just there we go. So that light's a little bit brighter. This one's already bright enough, and it's putting plenty of light on the wall over here. So quite happy with that. So where does this light to? Well, we're going to light this area in the corner. So create another mask, another radial gradient, and we will just pull that down into the corner over here. Now that light's got most of its lights up here already, so we just probably want to bring this down in this area here and make sure that the feather is at 100%. And then we'll just bring that up just a little bit to light that corner just a little bit more. I'm going to add a little bit of contrast in there, and I'm just going to add a little bit of clarity also into that area there. There we go. That looks nice. So happy with that. Now we could probably do the same on the other side, and we can probably use the same one. So I'm going to click on the center of the radial gradient, right click, duplicate the mask so we keep all the settings, and bring it over to this side here. Just make it a bit smaller, and we can bring that there. You can see it's increasing the light reflecting off the machine tool there. So I'm just going to rotate that slightly. Yep, happy with that. So going to do the same thing again. Click on the center, right click, take a duplicate of that, put it over this side over here. Now I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. I'm going to fill this area with the light as though there's a light sort of just out of shot here lighting this area here. So just going to make that nice and big, and we're going to just brighten that up just a bit more. Bring down the highlights slightly. Keep bringing that exposure up, a little bit of contrast. That looks okay, and it sort of gives an indication of light coming in from up here. Going to put a bit of clarity into that, so just down here to clarity, a little bit more clarity than we had. There we go. So that's working quite well. Probably want to light this upper area a little bit more as well, so we're going to take another separate radial gradient here and just bring that in at high level again, as though there's a light out of shot that's sort of casting most of its light over this way here. And I'm just going to pull that over there, mix it with a bit below, and then we're going to bring up the exposure up there as well. There we go. And add a little bit of contrast in there, and definitely want to put some clarity in. You watch this woodwork here. When we add the clarity, we'll just add some clarity there, and it just picks up as though that light bulb is the one that's just out of shot. It's just sort of lighting that area there. So that looks pretty good. Now we do need to create a little bit of interest down in this bottom left corner. We've got some tools here and tubs. So we're going to take that same one, click on it, right click, duplicate the mask, pull that down here. Right, now we don't want to light this area up quite as much, so we just want to try and keep this in the shot over here. I'm just going to rotate it slightly and bring it up. But as I say, we don't want this area here illuminated, so I'm going to subtract an object, okay, from this mask, and I'm just going to take a reasonable size brush here with this object selection, and I'm just going to bring that round there and make sure that we don't light up that area there. So we're subtracting. There we go. Did you see? We subtracted that area there from this mask here. So that looks more realistic. So it's quite contrasty along the front of these tools over here. So what we can do is we can take another radial gradient here. We can bring that in, just turn it slightly on the front of these tools, because we want to be able to see these tools. After all, it's a shot of the interior here. So I'm just going to cover that area there, and what I'm going to do in this case, I'm just going to open up the shadows. So if I go to the shadow slider and open up the shadows, I can open up the shadows without brightening up the window too much more over here. So now you can see the front of these machine tools. Just going to add a little bit of clarity to that as well. There we go. So that's looking pretty good. And then we're left with just this sort of darkish area down here. Now, there is a more modern device here. I think it's a battery charger. I do want to take that out of the shot, but I'm just going to brighten this area up first. So take another radial gradient, turn it so it sort of fits in with that area here. A bit more like that. And I'm just going to bring up the shadows again. Just open up the shadows a little bit down there so you can see what's under the table. That works well. Now let's remove this here. So let's come out of masks. Let's go into the heal tool here. We're going to take content aware heal tool. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to paint around that unit like so. Fill it in. That will remove that. There's a cable there. Let's take that cable out as well. There we go. So just a couple of little minor corrections just to make sure it looks okay down there, which it does. Very good. Okay, so I think we're just left with this little area here, which just needs a little bit more light. So I'll go back into masks. We'll create another radial gradient just covering this area here. You can see, just want to cover this area. I'm just going to rotate it around this way and bring it down a little bit. There we go. And then I'm just going to open up the shadows for that area there a little bit more. Very good. And we're going to add in a little bit of clarity there as well, just to make that pop a little bit. So I think that looks quite nice for an interior. So it's a relatively straightforward process that we've done using radial gradients by darkening the overall image so that we get the full dynamic range. We can see the outdoors, we can see the dirt on the windows, the lights are not overblown. So come out of that looks pretty good overall. I think I'm very happy with that. So let's just finish the image off. I think what we'll do is we'll probably brighten the whole scene slightly. There we go. And we're just going to bring those highlights down just a little bit again, just to make it work. The clipping in the black, I think, is still okay. So just hover over that triangle. Yep, we're comfortable with that. So I'm just going to add a little bit of vibrance into this shot. Just back the saturation off just a little bit to give it that sort of old world sort of look there. And bring up the textures. There's so much going on in here that if we add texture, just a little bit of texture to this scene, it really brings alive all of the edges and all of the tools and everything in there. And I'm just going to add a little bit of clarity, overall clarity, not too much, because it'll start looking like a bit of an HDR image if we have too much. So just to finish off now, I think we're pretty well there. I'm happy with the image. I'm just going to back the orange off ever so slightly. So I'm just going to go down to the HSL sliders here, go into saturation, and just drop the orange ever so slightly, just to take a little bit of that sort of orange hue out there. I'm pretty happy with this, really. Do I need to do anything else? I don't think so. No. So if you enjoyed the video, I know it was a quick one this time, but just trying to get that balance between indoor and outdoor, show you how to deal with the highlights and the shadows in a way that works. Make sure you expose for those highlights before you actually shoot the image as well, bring it in for processing. So yeah, if you enjoyed the video, please click like down below, always helps. And if you have any comments or questions or tips, feel free to put them down below. Always happy to see those. I do try to answer all of them. And if you haven't already subscribed, it would be great for you to join me here on YouTube. So for now, I'm going to say bye-bye.